I didn't think it would come to this, to be honest. But when I look back, I realize I'd already started walking away long before the final decision was made. People like me, we don't make dramatic exits. No big fight. No final words that echo in the night. We just leave. Quietly. Even when we know we shouldn't. It all started with a text. Simple. Short. One sentence that planted the seed of doubt in my mind. You're not the only one she's been seeing. I stared at it, at the notification blinking in front of me on my phone screen, unsure of what I was even supposed to do with this. For a moment, I thought I was imagining things. But then I read it again, and again, and again. It was from a number I didn't recognize, and there was no name attached to it. Just a random, cryptic message that could mean a million things. But one thing was clear, I wasn't the only one in her life anymore. I remember sitting in the dim light of my apartment, feeling the weight of that one message press against my chest, like someone was squeezing the air from my lungs. Who was this? Why now? Why send this to me? And most importantly, why her? I hadn't even realized anything was wrong until that moment. I didn't notice her pulling away, or at least I didn't want to. I was too busy with work, with life. Too busy pretending that everything was fine. The thing is, we weren't married. There was no legal bond, no vows to break. But we were together for almost 4 years, long enough to build a life together. A shared apartment, mutual friends, routines. Long enough that I started to think about the future in a way that no one should, without ever once considering that the person I thought I knew so well might not be the person I thought at all. I didn't call her right away. I didn't send an angry message or demand answers. I didn't want to confront her in that moment. Something inside me just snapped into a kind of calm, a quiet fury. Instead, I did what I knew best, pretended everything was normal. I went to work, grabbed drinks with friends, went through the motions. But inside, I was unraveling. The next few days were a blur. I spent my time distracted, lost in my thoughts, constantly staring at that message, trying to figure out who could have sent it. A part of me knew it was a risk to not confront her, but the other part was scared of what I might find, scared of the truth. Because I was already afraid that I had missed something. I had ignored the signs, had told myself everything was fine when deep down, I knew it wasn't. So, I did what any person in my position would do. I kept up the routine. When she came home each night, I greeted her with a smile, and we carried on as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed, and we both knew it. The tension was palpable. It was like walking on eggshells, every small conversation feeling strained and forced. A week passed before I could no longer ignore it. I was sitting at the kitchen table, waiting for her to come home from work. The message still burned in my mind, gnawing at me. And the longer I waited, the more I wondered what I was actually waiting for. What did I expect to happen? That she'd walk through the door and pretend nothing was different? That I'd look at her and see the woman I'd fallen for all those years ago? When she finally walked in, her eyes immediately darted to me. I couldn't read her expression, but I knew. She knew that I knew. And just for a second, time seemed to stop. She dropped her keys, and we just stood there, both of us unwilling to break the silence. It was her turn to speak. But before she could say anything, I stood up, my voice steady. I know. The words hung between us like smoke. She didn't deny it. She didn't argue. She just looked at me, as if waiting for me to continue. I don't know how long it's been going on, I said, my voice trailing off. But it's been happening. And now, we're here. The silence after my words felt too loud. The distance between us felt infinite. And yet, there we stood, two people who didn't know how to fix something that had already been broken. She finally spoke, her voice soft and almost apologetic, but there was something in the way she said it that made it sound empty, like a rehearsed line. It's not what you think. I didn't need her to say it. I didn't need explanations. I didn't need her to tell me the truth I already knew. I had already made up my mind. I wasn't staying. I didn't shout, didn't storm out. I just grabbed my jacket and my wallet, turned around, and walked out the door. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't grand, just a quiet decision to leave. She didn't chase after me, didn't call my name. She let me go, and I didn't look back. I left without saying goodbye. I thought maybe I would return. I thought maybe, in time, I would figure things out, maybe even forgive her. But in my heart, I knew that what had been broken couldn't be fixed. And that was the end of that chapter. But sometimes, things don't end just because you walk away. Sometimes, people come back. And when they do, nothing is ever the same again. One afternoon, a few months later, I was standing at my front door, trying to ignore the thoughts in my head, when I heard a knock. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't a phone call. It was her, standing there, looking different, but with the same familiar sadness in her eyes. And I could feel it in my bones. This was far from over. The knock on the door wasn't something I expected, but I didn't panic. I didn't even flinch. Instead, I just stood there, staring at the door as if waiting for something else to happen. But there she was, Isabel, the woman I had once shared everything with, now standing there on my doorstep like a stranger. She didn't speak right away. She just looked at me, her eyes holding a quiet desperation that I couldn't ignore. There was something in her gaze, something that made me feel like she wasn't just there to apologize or explain herself. It was as if she was standing there, waiting for me to make the first move, for me to tell her it was okay to come back. But I wasn't going to make that move. I wasn't ready for it, and if I'm being honest, I wasn't sure if I ever would be. Isabel, I said, my voice sounding strange in my own ears. It felt like I hadn't spoken to her in a lifetime. What are you doing here? She looked down at her hands, and for a brief moment, I saw the old version of her, the version I used to know. The version that would have smiled at me, held me close, and told me everything would be okay. But that woman was gone. The Isabel standing in front of me now was a shadow of the one I had loved, a version that didn't feel familiar at all. I had to see you, she said quietly, her voice almost breaking. She hesitated for a moment, as if deciding whether or not to continue. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But I can't just walk away and pretend nothing happened. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't want to hear her apologies. I didn't want to hear her excuses. I had already made up my mind to walk away from everything we once had. And yet, there she was, standing in front of me, asking for a chance at redemption. The thing is, I didn't feel angry anymore. I wasn't furious at her. What I felt was something more dangerous, indifference. It was as though I had already moved on in my heart, even though my body was still trying to catch up. I didn't need her answers. I didn't need her to tell me why she had done what she did. I had already accepted it, accepted the fact that the woman I thought I knew had never really been mine to begin with. I don't think we should talk about this right now, I said, taking a step back from the door. You should go. But she didn't move. She just stood there, her face pale, her lips trembling as if she was holding back tears. She finally spoke again, this time with more urgency in her voice. Please, just let me explain. I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell her to leave, to go back to whatever life she had been living while I was left in the wreckage of our relationship. But I couldn't. Something kept me rooted to the spot, something deep inside me that was too curious, too desperate for closure to walk away just yet. All right, I said, my voice softer than I intended. Come in. But this is the last time, Isabel. No more chances after this. She nodded, almost gratefully, and stepped inside. The air between us felt thick with everything we hadn't said, with everything that had been left unresolved for so long. We didn't sit down. We didn't do anything that resembled normal. Instead, we just stood there in the middle of the room, facing each other like two people who had once known everything about each other, but now shared nothing. I'm sorry, she started, her eyes meeting mine for the first time since she walked in. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to understand. But I need you to know that this, everything that happened, wasn't what I wanted. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It was like listening to a broken record, the same old lines, the same old apologies that had been said so many times before. But they felt empty now. The weight of her words didn't land on me the way they once would have. I wasn't sure if I was numb, or if I had just reached the point where nothing she said could make a difference. I don't know if you understand what you did to me, I replied, the words coming out colder than I intended. But I've been living with the consequences of your actions for months. I thought I could just move on, forget everything, but now you show up here like nothing happened. Like you can just walk back into my life and fix everything with a few words. She looked away then, as if ashamed of what she had done, but the moment didn't last long. She looked back at me, her eyes filled with an emotion I couldn't quite read. Was it regret? Guilt? Or was she just trying to convince herself that this would be the moment everything changed? I never stopped thinking about you, she said softly. Even after everything. I made a mistake, and I know I can't undo it. But I need you to know that I've been lost. And I can't keep running from the truth anymore. I wanted to tell her it didn't matter. I wanted to tell her that the truth didn't change anything, but I couldn't bring myself to say it. Instead, I just stood there, my mind racing, my heart torn between wanting to let her back in and knowing that doing so would only cause more pain. For a long time, we just stood there in silence. Neither of us spoke, and neither of us moved. The weight of what was happening, of what had already happened, hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. And then, without warning, Isabel took a step forward. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness," she whispered, "but I need you to know that I still love you. And I'm not going anywhere until you've heard me out." I wasn't sure what to say. My mind was screaming at me to turn her away, to tell her to leave and never come back. But my heart was still holding on, just a little bit, even though I knew better. I didn't know what I was waiting for. But whatever it was, I knew it wouldn't come from her words. It would come from me. I didn't know why I didn't ask her to leave. Maybe it was the way she looked at me, so vulnerable, so lost. Maybe it was the silence between us, that strange kind of quiet that somehow felt heavier than words. But I let her stay, and I hated myself for it. She stepped further into the room, the air thick with tension. Every move she made felt like a slow unraveling of something I had worked so hard to forget. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for, an apology? An explanation? Part of me wanted to believe that I could just walk away from her again, forget the past, and keep my peace. But another part of me was desperate for closure, for something that would finally let me move on. "So what now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Isabel didn't answer right away. She looked around the room as if trying to gather the right words. The old photographs on the wall, the way I had kept everything just the way it was when we had lived here together. It all felt foreign now, like she was seeing everything for the first time. "I don't expect you to take me back," she said finally, her voice quiet. I need you to know what happened. I need you to understand why I did what I did." I almost laughed. Why? Why now? After everything? My heart felt like it was being squeezed in my chest. I couldn't decide if I was angry or just exhausted by her presence. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she continued, her voice breaking slightly. "I never thought I could come back after what I did. But I couldn't leave things like this. Not without telling you the truth." There it was again. The word truth. It hung in the air like a weight. I didn't need her to tell me the truth. I had already known, hadn't I? What difference would it make now? But still, some part of me, the part one hated, couldn't resist. I wanted to hear it. I needed to hear it. "Go on," I said, finally looking at her. "Tell me, what happened?" She inhaled sharply, then slowly sat down on the couch, her hands trembling slightly. "I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't. But things got complicated, and I didn't know how to get out." I frowned. "Get out? What do you mean?" She glanced at me, almost as if measuring my reaction before speaking again. "It wasn't just about him. It was never just about him. It was about me. I was lost, and I didn't know how to find my way back. I thought I was doing the right thing, but all I ended up doing was hurting you." I couldn't breathe. There it was. The admission I didn't want to hear, but somehow had expected all along. I had always wondered, had always suspected that something wasn't right. "How long?" I asked, the words leaving my mouth before I could stop them. She hesitated. "It started a few months ago, and it's not what you think, I swear. It was emotional at first. I never meant for it to get physical, but it did." I felt my chest tighten. I wanted to scream at her, demand answers, ask how she could betray me like that. But I couldn't find the strength to do it. Instead, I stood there, staring at her, watching her struggle with the words that would change everything. "I never stopped loving you," she said, her voice small. "But I was broken, and I didn't know how to fix myself without pushing you away. It didn't make sense. None of it made sense. But there she was, telling me things I didn't want to hear, things I didn't want to believe. I had always thought that when the time came, when the truth finally came out, I would be ready for it. But I wasn't. I wasn't ready at all." "So you thought cheating was the way to fix things?" I said, almost in disbelief. The words came out before I could stop them, and I immediately regretted it. Isabel flinched, as if my words had physically hurt her. "No, it wasn't about that. It was never about him. It was about me feeling like I was losing myself. And I pushed you away because I thought I couldn't have both. I thought I could fix it all by shutting you out. I wanted to hate her for this. I wanted to push her away and never look back. But there was something about her honesty, something raw and vulnerable, that stopped me. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even hurt. I was empty. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't deserve anything from you. But I needed you to know the truth. The truth. Again, I looked at her, seeing her not as the woman I once loved, but as a stranger I didn't understand. A woman who had chosen a path that led her away from me, away from everything we had built together. It was almost like she was waiting for me to say something, but I couldn't. I couldn't find the words to tell her how much she had hurt me, how much I had been broken by everything that had happened. All I could do was stand there, listening to the silence between us, knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. And then, just as I thought I couldn't bear it any longer, she stood up. I know you're angry. I know you're hurt. But I had to come here. I couldn't live with the lie anymore. She walked toward the door, and for a moment, I thought she was leaving again, disappearing from my life the way she had so many times before. But she stopped at the door, turned around, and looked at me one last time. I'm sorry. I never meant to destroy you, she said quietly. I hope you find what you're looking for. I hope you can forgive me someday. And with that, she left. The door closed behind her, and I was left standing in the silence, wondering if I had just let the only person I ever truly loved walk away for good. The silence after she left was suffocating. I stood there, motionless, staring at the door as if somehow willing her to come back. But she didn't. Of course, she didn't. Why would she? She had already said everything she needed to say. I was alone again, but this time, the emptiness was different. It wasn't just the absence of her. It was the absence of something I thought I had, something I thought I could trust. My mind was racing, spinning with all the things she'd said, all the things she hadn't. How was I supposed to move on from this? How was I supposed to go on, knowing what she had done? I couldn't bring myself to pick up my phone. I didn't want to talk to anyone, didn't want to hear the usual words of comfort. What were they going to say? That I deserved better? That I would find someone else? That life went on. None of it mattered. I wasn't sure if I believed any of it anymore. I sat down on the couch, running my hands over my face, trying to collect my thoughts. The image of Isabel at my door, so fragile, so lost, kept replaying in my mind. For a moment, I felt a flicker of something, sympathy, maybe. Or was it pity? Did I still care about her? The confusion was overwhelming. I couldn't tell if I wanted to hold on or let go. I wasn't sure if it was love I was feeling or just the residue of a life that had once been mine. She had come to me, asking for forgiveness. But what was forgiveness when the trust had already been shattered? Could I ever really forgive her? Could I ever go back to the way things were? I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, her face appeared, her words echoing in my mind. I never stopped loving you. I had heard it so many times before, but this time, it felt different. It didn't feel like a promise. It felt like a plea. In the dark of my apartment, I tried to understand it all. Why she had done it, why she had lied, why she had come back. The questions piled up, but the answers never seemed to come. It wasn't just the affair, though. It was the lies, the distance, the way she had slowly pulled away from me without ever telling me why. I realized, in that quiet, restless moment, that maybe it wasn't about forgiveness. Maybe it was about knowing when to walk away, even when your heart is still tangled in the past. Maybe the hardest part wasn't leaving. It was accepting that some things are broken beyond repair. I got up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below, the streets empty and silent. For the first time in months, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I wasn't sure where I was going from here, but I knew one thing. I couldn't go back to her. Not anymore. But that didn't mean I could forget her. That didn't mean I wouldn't think about her, wonder about her, for a long time to come. Because no matter how much I tried to convince myself that I was over it, over her, I knew it wasn't true. And maybe that was the worst part of all. The days blurred into one another after she left. Time felt like it was moving too quickly and too slowly at the same time. I went to work, I came home, I ate, I slept, or at least I tried to. There were moments when I'd catch myself staring blankly at the walls, as if waiting for something to change. But nothing did. Life went on, as it always does, but I was different now. I couldn't escape the feeling that everything had shifted and nothing would ever be the same. It was in those quiet moments, when I was alone with my thoughts, that I realized how much I had underestimated the effect Isabel had on me. Even now, even after everything, she was still there. Her memory lingered in every corner of my apartment, in every habit we used to share. She had left me physically, but she had never really left my mind. I tried to push those thoughts aside. I tried to ignore them, to convince myself that it didn't matter. She had betrayed me. She had chosen someone else. And yet, I was still here, torn between anger and something else that I couldn't name. It didn't make sense. How could I still care about her after everything she'd done? The phone rang, snapping me out of my thoughts. I almost didn't pick it up, but something told me I should. Hello. I answered, my voice flat. There was a pause on the other end, followed by a hesitant voice. It's Isabel. For a moment, I didn't know how to react. The sound of her voice, so familiar, yet so distant, felt like a punch in the gut. Why was she calling? Hadn't she said everything she needed to say? What do you want? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I didn't want to leave things like we did, she said softly, almost apologetically. I don't know if I can fix it, but I need to try. I owe you that much. I felt my heart rate increase, my palms sweating. I didn't want to talk to her. I didn't want to hear her voice, didn't want to let her back in. But part of me wanted to know. Isabel, there's nothing left to fix. I replied, my tone colder than I intended. You made your choice, and I'm not a part of it anymore. There was silence on the other end, and for a moment, I thought she might hang up. But she didn't. Instead, she spoke again, her voice trembling. I know I messed up. I know I can't take it back. But I don't know what to do with myself without you. I feel like I've lost everything. I closed my eyes, letting her words sink in. I wasn't sure what I expected, but it wasn't this. Her vulnerability was real, but so was the pain she had caused. You don't get to play the victim here, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. You hurt me, Isabel. You lied to me. And now you want me to comfort you? To make it all better? She was quiet for a long time. I could hear her breathing on the other end, the weight of my words sinking in. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. But I had to hear your voice again. I had to know if you'd even consider giving me a chance to explain. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if there was anything to say. I think you should go, I replied, my heart aching as I spoke the words. I don't think I can help you anymore. There was a long pause before she spoke again. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice breaking. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted this to happen. The line went silent as she hung up, and I was left standing there, holding the phone, wondering if I had made the right choice. Part of me wanted to call her back, to hear her out, to see if there was any chance we could fix this. But deep down, I knew I couldn't go back. The damage was done, and no amount of words could change that. I placed the phone down on the table and let out a deep breath. It wasn't over, not yet. But I was getting closer to the truth. And maybe, just maybe, that's what I needed to move on. The days that followed felt like a strange kind of limbo. I went about my routine, pretending everything was fine, but it wasn't. How could it be? Isabel's words still echoed in my head, and the weight of her apology, her pain, hung over me like a cloud that refused to lift. I kept asking myself if I had done the right thing by cutting her off, by refusing to listen to what she had to say. I tried to bury my thoughts in work, in meaningless distractions, but it never worked. The silence in my apartment was deafening, and every corner of the place seemed to remind me of what had been and what was no longer there. I hadn't just lost her. I had lost the version of myself that had once been so sure, so certain of what I wanted. Now, I was questioning everything. I didn't expect to hear from her again, but she kept haunting my thoughts. Could I forgive her? Should I even try? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that my anger wasn't just at her. It was at myself, for allowing myself to get this far into something that was never going to work. But I wasn't ready to face that reality. Not yet. It was late one evening when the knock came again. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a split second, I thought maybe it was just my imagination. But when I opened the door, there she was. Isabel, standing in front of me again, looking even more fragile than I remembered. Her eyes were red, and her hair, usually so perfectly kept, hung loosely around her face. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in days, someone who was desperate for something she couldn't have. I couldn't stay away, she said, her voice barely audible. I didn't know what to say. My heart was racing, and my thoughts were all over the place. I wanted to shut the door, to walk away and pretend I never saw her. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the rawness in her eyes, Or maybe it was the part of me that was still hoping for something, anything, to fix this mess. "Why are you here, Isabel?" I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. She swallowed hard before speaking again. "Because I need to know if there's any chance, any at all, that we can fix this. I need you to know that I'm not the person I was when I left. I've changed. I've seen what I did, and I can't undo it, but I want to make things right." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had spent so long convincing myself that I was over it, that I was done, but hearing her say that, seeing her standing there so vulnerable, brought everything rushing back. The feelings I thought I had buried came flooding to the surface, and I couldn't stop them. But I wasn't ready to open that door, not again. "You can't just come back, Isabel," I said, my voice shaking with emotion I wasn't ready to confront. "It's not that simple. You can't undo what you've done. You can't just show up here and expect everything to go back to the way it was." She looked down at the ground, her face etched with regret. I know it's not that simple, but I need you to know that I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Whatever it takes to make this right." I didn't know if I was being weak or if I was being honest with myself. Maybe there was still a part of me that was holding on, that was willing to forgive, to let her back in. But that part of me was fading fast, and I didn't know if I could fight it any longer. The silence between us stretched on, thick and heavy. I wanted to say something, anything, to end it, but I didn't know what to say. In the end, it was her who broke the silence. "I'm not asking for you to forgive me right now. I just need you to know that I'm sorry. And I'll be here, waiting, whenever you're ready." And then, without another word, she turned and left. The door clicked shut behind her, and I stood there, frozen, the silence settling back in like a weight I couldn't escape. She was gone again, but the taste of her words still lingered. "I'll be here, waiting, whenever you're ready." I didn't know what to make of it. How could she just leave after saying something like that? And why did it feel like a promise, or maybe a threat? I didn't want to let her back in, I told myself. I couldn't afford to. But in the days that followed, it was all I could think about. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her standing there, vulnerable, remorseful. It was the same feeling I had when she first walked away. How could someone who had hurt me so deeply still have this kind of power over me? I tried to distract myself. I went to work, met up with friends, scrolled endlessly through my phone. But nothing could silence the thought of Isabel, of her words. I found myself questioning if I had done the right thing by shutting her out. If I'd really closed the door, or if I had just locked myself in a room with my own confusion. It wasn't until the weekend, when I was at home, that it hit me. I had been avoiding the truth, avoiding the fact that I still cared. I still missed her. And the worst part? I didn't know if I wanted to forgive her, or if I just wanted to forget her altogether. I was stuck in this space, torn between two paths, neither of which I felt ready to walk. I found myself standing by the window, looking out at the rain falling softly on the street below. Everything felt muted, the world outside a blur. That's when the message came through. A single text from her. "Are you ever going to talk to me again?" I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. What did I want to say? What could I say? I hadn't given her a real answer before, and now, I wasn't sure if I had one at all. Would I keep running from this? Would I keep pretending I could be okay without her? Or was it time to face the truth? Time to stop running from the only thing that had ever truly mattered? The words felt like they were just waiting to spill out of me. "I'm not ready," I typed. But before I could hit send, my finger hovered. I stared at it, then deleted everything. I wasn't ready, and maybe I never would be. But she was waiting, and I didn't know how long I could keep her waiting. Days passed, and the tension in my chest only grew. I spent too much time thinking about the wrong things, about the hurt, the betrayal, and all the ways things had gone wrong. But as much as I tried to push her out of my mind, Isabel's words kept coming back to me. "I'm sorry. I'll be here, waiting." The thought of her waiting, not just for forgiveness, but for some kind of understanding, gnawed at me. One evening, I sat down, staring at the phone in my hand. I couldn't put it off any longer. I had to decide. The past few weeks had shown me something I hadn't wanted to see before. Maybe there was more to this than I had let myself believe. It wasn't just the mistake she had made. It was the pain of losing someone I had once loved more than anything. I wasn't sure if I was ready to forgive everything, but I was ready to stop running. I owed myself that much. So I took a deep breath and typed the words I hadn't expected to say. "I'm ready to talk." It didn't take long for her to reply. "When?" "Now." I typed back, standing up and pacing in the small space of my apartment. The decision felt like a weight lifting off me, but it also felt terrifying. What if we couldn't fix things? What if the damage was too great? But I had to know. I had to at least try. Within minutes, Isabel was at my door again. She looked the same, but there was a softness in her expression that I hadn't seen before. She wasn't waiting for me to say something first. She didn't need to. She just walked in, quietly, and sat down across from me. For a long time, neither of us spoke. We just sat there, the space between us filled with everything we had both been avoiding. Finally, she looked at me, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm sorry for everything. I never wanted to hurt you. I don't know if I can make up for what I did, but I need you to know that I've changed." I met her eyes, seeing the truth in them, the honesty in the way she spoke. It wasn't about excuses anymore. It was about two people who had been broken, but maybe not beyond repair. "I know," I said quietly. "I know you've changed. And I've changed too." She looked at me, her brow furrowing. "What do you mean?" I smiled softly, finally feeling something I hadn't in so long. Hope. "I'm not sure what comes next, but I think we can try. One step at a time." Isabel's eyes filled with emotion, and for the first time in months, I saw the woman I had fallen in love with, not the one who had betrayed me, but the one who was willing to fight for something real. She stood up slowly, then walked over to me, hesitating for just a moment before she reached out. "I can't promise that everything will be perfect," she said, her voice steady, "but I can promise that I'll try. We'll try. Together." I nodded, and for the first time, the weight of the past didn't feel as heavy. We had both been through something that had tested us, that had torn us apart, but here we were, still standing, still trying. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough.